The world snapped back into focus with the brutal force of a slap. One moment, I was drowning in the suffocating darkness of my own death, the cold floorboards pressing against my cheek, the housekeeper's malevolent whispers the last sound I would ever hear. The next, I was standing in the warm, familiar glow of my own living room, the man I was supposed to marry tomorrow staring at me with impatience and fury. "Can you stop making a scene, Maya? Her family isn't here. She's seriously ill and I'm the only one she can rely on. What are you even jealous about? She's dying. Can't you be a little more understanding?" The voice of my fiancé, Adrian Vance, was a jagged shard of glass scraping against the raw nerves of my memory. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my chest, expecting to feel the brittle weakness of my past life body, the paralysis that had stolen my legs and my future. Instead, I felt the strong, steady beat of a healthy heart. The terror of being tormented to death was so fresh, a scream trapped in my throat, but the scene before me was from a different era, the prelude to all my nightmares. Adrian and I had been together for 6 years. We had met in college, two hungry dreamers who built our tech startup from the ground up, surviving on instant noodles and shared ambition. The company, Ether Innovations, had just begun to show real promise. Our families had settled the wedding details. Tomorrow was to be the culmination of all our struggles, the day I would become Mrs. Vance. But Adrian had a ghost, a specter named Isabella Rossi. Their past was a shadow I could never quite dispel. And now, on the eve of our wedding, she had called, her voice a fragile thread on the line, claiming a sudden, critical illness. Without a second thought, Adrian was ready to abandon everything, me, our wedding, our future, to rush to her side. In my first life I had been desperate. I had pleaded, cried, and ultimately, in a fatal mistake, gotten into the car with him. I remembered the headlights of the truck, blinding and immense. I remembered the instinctual, foolish lunge to shield him. I remembered the sound of my own spine snapping. I was left a prisoner in my own body while he walked away with minor scratches. He stood before our families, his hand on a Bible, and swore he would never leave me. It was a vow that lasted less than a month before he dissolved our engagement and married Isabella. The aftermath was a slow, agonizing descent into hell. My parents, their hearts shattered, aged overnight. My mother, consumed by grief, suffered a fatal heart attack. My father, in a final desperate act to ensure my care, climbed to the roof of Ether Innovations and jumped. His death was meant to guilt Adrian into responsibility, but it only bred a deeper, more venomous resentment. Under public pressure, Adrian took me in, only to hand me over to a cruel housekeeper with a cold instruction: keep her quiet. And she did until the very end. All of this flashed through my mind in the span of a heartbeat. The love I had felt for this man for 6 years had been burned away in the pyre of my previous suffering, leaving only the cold, hard ash of hatred. Adrian misread my silence for acquiescence. "I have to go, Maya. It's an emergency." "This emergency," I said, my voice eerily calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. "Doesn't she have family? Can't they hire a nurse? Why does it have to be you? And why, of all nights, does this life-threatening illness strike now?" He rolled his eyes, that familiar gesture of dismissal that I now saw for the contempt it was. "You're being paranoid. I've been with you for 6 years. Isn't that proof enough? If there were anything left between me and her, we wouldn't be getting married tomorrow. What's the big deal if we delay the ceremony a day?" I suppressed the bitter laugh that threatened to bubble up. The big deal. The big deal was a lifetime of paralysis. The big deal was the death of my parents. The big deal was my own abuse and murder. I quietly slid my phone from my pocket and tapped the record button. 6 years, I said, letting a tremor enter my voice, playing the part of the hurt fiancé one last time. "Does those 6 years mean nothing? Am I worth less to you than a phone call from her? She says she's sick, but there's no doctor's note, no proof. You believe her, but you won't believe me. If you walk out that door tonight, Adrian, then all these years of love were a lie. We're done. The wedding is off." His face, already tight with anger, darkened further. "Maya, you're being completely unreasonable. Don't you dare try to threaten me with a breakup. If you don't want to be a part of my life, there are plenty of women who would jump at the chance. Break up if you want. See if I care." With those final, searing words, he turned on his heel and stormed out of our apartment, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, I moved with a purpose I hadn't possessed in either lifetime. I raised my phone, snapped a clear picture of his retreating back, and then saved the audio recording. Without a moment's hesitation, I went to every social media platform I had. I posted the picture and the audio file. My caption was concise and devastating. Tonight, the night before our wedding, my fiancé of 6 years, Adrian Vance, chose to leave me to go to his ex-girlfriend, Isabella Rossi. He has called off our wedding. 6 years of love, gone in an instant. I guess some ghosts are stronger than promises. I tagged him, I tagged our company, and I set it loose into the world. Then I turned off my phone. The silence that descended upon the apartment was the most peaceful sound I had heard in a very, very long time. My revenge had begun. The silence in the apartment was a physical presence, thick and heavy, but for the first time it was a silence of my own choosing. In my previous life, the silence that followed Adrian's departure had been filled with my sobs, a prelude to the screams that would later be trapped in my throat. Now it was a strategic calm, the eye of my personal hurricane. It didn't last long. My landline, a relic we kept for emergencies, began to shrill, cutting through the quiet. I knew who it was before I even looked at the caller ID. I picked it up. Why? What is the meaning of this nonsense on the internet? My mother's voice was tight with worry, not anger. Adrian's mother just called me hysterical. What is happening? I took a deep breath. This was the first bridge I had to cross without burning it down. Mom's true. Adrian left. Isabella Rossi called, said she was dying, and he went to her. He said our wedding could be delayed a day. He said if I didn't like it, we were through. But the families, the arrangements. She sputtered, her mind struggling to process the social catastrophe. Mom, listen to me, I said, my voice firm yet gentle. If he can do this the night before our wedding, what kind of husband would he be? He chose her. That means he never truly let her go. I was just a placeholder. I will not be anyone's second choice. The wedding is off. I am not changing my mind. There was a long silence on the other end. Then I heard my father's voice, steady and strong, in the background. Is that my girl? Put her on speaker. Maya, my father's voice boomed, a comforting sound. Are you sure? More sure than I've ever been about anything, Dad. Then that's it, he said, and I could almost see him squaring his shoulders. We'll deal with the rest. You stay strong. The next call was from Adrian's mother, Eleanor Vance. Her voice was a sharp, serrated knife. Maya, you foolish girl. Delete that post immediately. You're ruining my son's reputation. Do you know what you're throwing away? The fact that Adrian was willing to marry you was a blessing for your family. Don't get greedy. A man of his standing could have his pick. You should be on your knees thanking him for choosing you, not making a scene. In my past life, her words would have cut me to the quick. Now they just confirmed the viper's nest I was escaping. Eleanor, I said, my tone icy. Your son made his choice. He's with Isabella. His reputation is of his own making. And I am no one's beggar. Do not call this number again. I hung up before she could reply and promptly blocked her number, along with Adrian's and his father's. The sense of liberation was dizzying. I spent the next hour methodically packing Adrian's things into cardboard boxes. Each photograph of us I took down, each piece of his clothing I folded, felt like I was shedding a layer of dead skin. The love was gone, but the 6 years were a fact of my history. I wouldn't erase them, but I would no longer be defined by their tragic end. As dawn began to paint the sky, my phone, now turned back on, exploded. Not with calls from family, but with messages from colleagues and friends who had seen my post. The wave of support was overwhelming. Sis, you dropped this crown, read one. What a scumbag. You deserve so much better, read another. The court of public opinion had swiftly and decisively ruled in my favor. I was drinking a cup of tea, watching the sunrise, when a news alert popped up on my phone. My blood ran cold, not from fear but from a profound, chilling sense of déjà vu. Breaking. Single vehicle crash on I-95. 1 critically injured. Driver identified as Adrian Vance, CEO of Ether Innovations. A coworker texted me seconds later. Maya, oh my God, did you hear? Adrian was in a horrible accident. He's in the ICU. I typed back my reply, my fingers steady. He's my ex. What does that have to do with me? I could almost hear the stunned silence on the other end. Then, guess that's karma, huh? I didn't know about karma. I only knew the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of cause and effect. He had driven recklessly in a fit of passion to see another woman, just as he had in my first life. The only difference was this time I wasn't in the passenger seat to take the blow for him. The details trickled in throughout the day. His life had been saved, but the spinal injury was severe. The doctor said he was paralyzed from the waist down. Permanently. A strange quiet settled over me. This was the exact fate he had so carelessly allowed me to suffer in another lifetime. The symmetry was terrifying. It didn't take long for the hounds to pick up the scent. As I left work that evening, they were waiting for me at the company gates. Eleanor and Robert Vance. They looked like they had aged a decade in a single day. Eleanor rushed forward, her face a mask of tear-streaked fury. "Maya, there you are. My son is lying broken in a hospital, and you have the nerve to go about your day as if nothing happened? You need to come to the hospital. No. You need to take care of him." I calmly sidestepped her grasping hands. "Your son has nothing to do with me," I stated, my voice carrying in the evening air. Several of my colleagues stopped to watch. "We broke up. Or did you forget his charming final words to me?" She ignored me, resorting to the oldest trick in the book. She sank to the pavement, wailing. "Oh, look at this heartless woman. My son loved her for 6 years, spent so much money on her, and now that he's injured she abandons him. She cancels the wedding and throws him away like trash. She's selfish. Cruel. You will face retribution for this, Maya." The onlookers stared, their expressions shifting from curiosity to judgment. I saw it in their eyes, the easy narrative of the cold woman abandoning her disabled lover. I would not let this stand. I took out my phone. "Let me refresh your memory, Eleanor." I tapped the screen and Adrian's voice, clear and cruel, rang out in the tense air. "Don't you dare try to threaten me with a breakup. Break up if you want. See if I care." The crowd's murmurs instantly turned against the Vances. "So he left her for his ex and got into the crash?" someone said loud enough to be heard. "And now they want to blame her? Unbelievable." I called security, who efficiently escorted the sputtering, furious Vances away from the property. But as I watched them go, I knew this was far from over. They had lost their golden boy's future and they were desperate. A desperate animal is the most dangerous kind. And I knew their next move would be to go after the only leverage they thought they had left. My parents. I was right. The Vances, having failed to publicly shame me into submission, descended upon my parents' home like locusts. My father called me, his voice a low, controlled rumble of anger. "They're here, Maya. Don't worry, we're handling it." I drove over immediately, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The ghosts of my past life whispered to me. My mother's heart condition, the stress that could trigger a fatal attack. I would not let history repeat itself. Not in this way. I arrived to find Eleanor Vance standing on the doorstep, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. Robert stood behind her, a silent, grim shadow. "Your daughter led my son on for years." Eleanor was shrieking at my mother, who stood pale but resolute in the doorway. If not for this emotional whiplash, he never would have been so distracted. He never would have crashed. This is on her. She is morally obligated to marry him and take care of him. She owes him that much. My mother, Clara, clutched her chest and my fear spiked. But before I could intervene, my father, David, stepped forward. He was a retired Marine, and he moved with a quiet, formidable authority that made the Vances take a step back. "Your son," my father said, his voice cutting through Eleanor's hysterics, "was entangled with his ex and deceived my daughter for 6 years. He crashed his car because he was speeding to see another woman. What part of that is my daughter's fault? His ex won't take responsibility, so you come to try and force my daughter to care for a crippled, unfaithful man? Get off my property." He didn't raise his voice, but the command was absolute. When Robert Vance tried to protest, my father didn't waste words. He grabbed the broom from beside the door. With a series of swift, precise moves that spoke of his training, he used the handle to herd the sputtering, insult-screaming Vances down the walkway and shoved them out onto the sidewalk. Neighbors were watching, their faces a mixture of shock and grim satisfaction. I had already made sure everyone on the street knew the full story. The court of public opinion was now in session on my parents' street, and the Vances were found guilty. "Reap what you sow," an elderly neighbor called out, shaking his head. The Vances retreated, their faces purple with humiliation. They had gained nothing and had become the neighborhood spectacle. I stayed with my parents that night, making them both cups of chamomile tea. "I'm so sorry you had to deal with that," I said, my voice thick with a guilt I hadn't anticipated. "Don't you dare apologize," my mother said, taking my hand. Her pulse was steady under my fingers, a relief so profound it made me weak. "You did the right thing. We are proud of you for walking away. No one should have to live a life of regret tied to a man who doesn't value them." My father nodded, his hand on my shoulder. "We'll get through this, Maya. As a family." The next few days were a study in surreal normalcy. I went to work, I ate, I slept. I ignored the escalating storm of messages from the Van Cess and their flying monkeys. I had built a wall around my new life and it was holding. Then the so-called mediator arrived. I was leaving a coffee shop when a woman with a sharply tailored blazer and a camera operator materialized in front of me. She shoved a microphone in my face. "Maya, I'm Naomi Thorne from Justice Talk. Your ex-fiancé, Adrian Vance, is paralyzed. He's asking for one last meeting. He just wants to see you. Can you explain to our viewers why you, his partner of 6 years, have refused to even visit him in the hospital? Don't you feel a sense of responsibility?" I recognized her instantly. In my past life she had been the one to take edited footage of me, pale, broken and bedridden, and spin a narrative that I was a manipulative, gold-digging invalid trying to trap a successful man. She had been Isabella's mouthpiece then and she was clearly someone's now. I stared directly into the camera lens, a cold smile touching my lips. If they wanted a show I would give them one. But it would be on my terms. "That man," I said, my voice clear and steady, "is my ex. We broke up before the accident. He broke off our engagement because he wanted to rush to his ex-girlfriend, Isabella Rossi. He got into the crash on his way to her, a crash that left him paralyzed. He doesn't go to her for responsibility, but he tries to push it onto me. And you call that justice?" Naomi's smile was patronizing. "But you were with him for 6 years. If you had stopped him from leaving that night, perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided. Don't you bear even a sliver of the blame? Shouldn't you shoulder some of the consequences?" Her audacity was breathtaking. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "His legs are on his own body. How was I supposed to stop him? Tie him up? Let me be perfectly clear. A dog that forgets its leash, running wild in the street, covered in filth but still eager to chase after scraps. How could anyone stop that?" She pounced, her eyes gleaming. "So you admit that his paralysis is, in part, your fault?" I crossed my arms. "You're really trying to pin this on me? Why aren't you asking about Isabella Rossi? If she hadn't called him in the middle of the night, feigning a critical illness, he never would have sped off. She's the one who should be held accountable, not me. And you call yourself a mediator?" Naomi's composure cracked. "Don't dodge the question. We're talking about you. A man is suffering, begging for one last glimpse of the woman he loves, and you're too heartless to grant it? What kind of woman are you?" I looked from her furious face to the camera and then back. "Fine," I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'll go. I'll see what Adrian Vance has to say for himself." A triumphant gleam lit up her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought she was leading me to my public execution. But as I walked towards my car, I discreetly opened a live streaming app on my phone, connecting it to a private account I had set up for just this purpose. I titled the stream, "The Truth, Confronting My Ex and the So-Called Mediator." If they wanted a spectacle, the whole world was invited to watch. The trap wasn't for me. I was just the one springing it. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair. It was a scent that lived in my bones, a phantom pain from a lifetime ago. I steeled myself as I walked in, my phone held casually in my hand, the live stream silently broadcasting everything. Adrian lay in the bed, a pale imitation of the vibrant, arrogant man I had loved. He was gaunt, his skin waxy. His parents fluttered around him, fluffing pillows and adjusting blankets, putting on a show of pitiful devotion for the camera Naomi Thorne had brought in. The moment he saw me, his eyes, dull with pain and medication, seemed to sharpen. "Maya," he whispered, his voice raspy. "You came." Naomi nudged the cameraman, who zoomed in on my face, no doubt hoping to capture a flicker of guilt or tenderness. "I was wrong," Adrian continued, laying it on thick. "That night I was just angry. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? 6 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Do you despise me now that I'm like this? He gestured weakly towards his motionless legs. He was doing exactly what I expected, trying to use our shared history and his newfound vulnerability to guilt me, to trap me. He knew his life was over and he wanted to drag me down into the abyss with him, just as he had before. I gave him a small, enigmatic smile. How could I despise you, Adrian? If we can't be lovers, we can always be friends. I then turned my gaze to Naomi and the camera. But speaking of lovers, where is Isabella? You rushed out in the middle of the night for her and ended up in this condition. Shouldn't she be here by your side taking care of you? The air in the room shifted. Eleanor Vance's face tightened. Robert looked away. I pressed on, my tone light but my words precise. I turned to the mediator. Did you invite her? Adrian is in this state because of her. So where is she? I paused, letting the silence hang. But it doesn't matter. Even though Adrian betrayed me for her as his friend, I'll make sure the two of them get the wedding they deserve. They've certainly earned it. The mask slipped. Adrian's face contorted in frustration. Maya, stop it. The one I love is you, not Isabella. She and I are just friends. I let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. Really? The night before our wedding you ignored my pleas, broke our engagement and raced to her. Now after the accident, you want me to stand in as her substitute? To wipe your brow and empty your bedpan because the woman you actually risked everything for can't be bothered? That's shameless, Adrian. Before he could respond, the door flew open and a figure in white burst in. It was Isabella Rossi herself, her eyes wide and brimming with manufactured tears. She looked perfectly healthy, her critical illness nowhere to be seen. She threw herself at my feet, clutching my pant legs. Please, Maya. I know this is all my fault, but Adrian truly loves you. He only argued with you that night because he was worried about me. Please, you have to forgive him. He can't live without you. She was putting on a masterclass in performative grief, trying to paint me as the cold-hearted villain in their tragic romance. Calmly, I pried her hands from my clothes. If you admit it's your fault, Isabella, then you should be the one to stay and take care of him for the rest of his life. After all, he got into this accident because of you. The two of you are tied together now. For life. That broke Adrian's composure. Maya, don't you dare go too far. Just then, Naomi Thorne glanced at her cameraman and made a subtle cutting motion across her throat. The camera's red light went off. The performance was over as far as they were concerned. The mediator dropped her concerned facade instantly. Isabella has been pampered her whole life. She wouldn't know the first thing about patient care. You as the ex-girlfriend still have a responsibility. Stop calling her a homewrecker. She and Adrian haven't even done anything improper. Isabella, seizing the chance, stopped crying and stood up, brushing off her dress. Adrian and I are like brother and sister. You're misunderstanding everything. If only you had stopped him that night, this never would have happened. Eleanor Vance rushed forward, grabbing my hands with a grip like iron. You see, only you can do this, Maya. Only if you take care of our son can we have peace. Isabella is useless. She doesn't even have a job. How could she support him? I yanked my hands away and fixed my cold gaze on Isabella. You look perfectly healthy to me. You staged this whole thing to ruin my wedding. And now that he's a cripple, you don't want to deal with the consequences. Isabella stammered. I was only joking that night. I didn't know it would turn out this way. The Vances turned their furious eyes on her while Adrian, ever her defender, tried to interject. She didn't mean it. She never expected this. I sneered. So now he's had an accident and you want me to shoulder the blame for your joke? If you want a caretaker, Adrian looked to Isabella. Leave me out of it. Panic flashed in Isabella's eyes. This has nothing to do with me. It was a joke. I never wanted to spend my life with the word caught in her throat, but everyone in the room heard it. A cripple. The unspoken word hung in the air, toxic and definitive. Adrian's face darkened, a storm of betrayal and rage clouding his features. Isabella, he whispered, his voice dangerously low. I didn't mean it that way, Adrian. You can't blame me for this, she cried, backpedaling frantically. Eleanor Vance had heard enough. Her hand whipped out and connected with Isabella's cheek in a crack that echoed in the sterile room. You little viper. If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't be like this. If he doesn't recover, you'll never escape our family. You will pay for this. Naomi rushed to pull a sobbing Isabella behind her. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, violence isn't the answer. The important thing is that Maya takes responsibility. Isabella will help, of course, but how could you strike her? Then Naomi turned to me, her true colors finally revealed. She bared her teeth in a predatory smile. Maya, let me make this clear. I'm a well-known mediator with 5 million followers. If I post the edited footage from today online, it will destroy you. You have 2 choices. 1, you obediently stay, care for Adrian, marry him and give him children. Or 2, I will make sure the entire world knows you are a selfish, greedy, ungrateful monster. Your parents are old. Your mother has a heart condition. Imagine the stress if a horde of angry netizens descended upon them. You can imagine the consequences, can't you? I raised an eyebrow, feigning a fear I didn't feel. The internet can see the truth. She snorted. I can turn black into white with a little editing. My 5 million followers won't check the facts. They'll tear your family apart. This isn't my first time. I've driven people to death before. Obey or you'll be next. I smiled then, a genuine chilling smile. Checkmate. I raised my phone, turning the screen to face her. It showed the live stream still running. The viewer count was in the tens of thousands, and the comment section was a raging river of fury, directed squarely at her, Adrian and Isabella. Say hello to your audience, Naomi, I said sweetly. They've heard every word. The color drained from her face. The cameraman beside her gasped. Naomi, it's over. We're being mass reported. The followers, they're plummeting. I kept filming as Naomi Thorne's career, reputation and vile empire crumbled in real time, right there in that hospital room. The first major pawn in my game of revenge had just been taken off the board. And the king and queen were now in check. The fallout from the livestream was swift and brutal. It was a digital wildfire, consuming everything in its path. The video was clipped, memed and spread across every social media platform. The court of public opinion, which Naomi Thorne had so arrogantly claimed to control, delivered its verdict with merciless efficiency. #Justice for Maya trended worldwide. #Naomi Thorne's overparty was a close second. Advertisers fell over themselves to cut ties with her. Her social media accounts, with their 5 million followers, were mass reported and suspended within hours. Past victims of her character assassination came forward, their stories adding fuel to the inferno. She was facing multiple defamation lawsuits and a potential criminal investigation. A week later, she showed up at my parents' doorstep, a broken woman. Her expensive blazer was wrinkled, her hair disheveled. Dragging a reluctant Isabella Rossi behind her, she collapsed to her knees on the welcome mat. Maya, I know I was wrong, she sobbed, her voice raw. I shouldn't have twisted the truth. Please, you have to say something. Tell them it was a joke and act. I beg you. I don't want to go to prison. I can't handle this debt. She clutched at my legs just as Isabella had in the hospital. It was all Isabella's idea. He pushed me into it. Please, you have to help me. That was the final straw for Isabella. The pressure, the humiliation, the loss of her wealthy meal ticket and Adrian, it all exploded. Naomi, you bitch. I treated you like a sister. I paid you. And now you're throwing me under the bus. Before I could even form a response, Naomi shot to her feet and slapped Isabella hard across the face, her eyes burning with a feral rage. You cursed star. Wasn't ruining Adrian's life enough? Now you've destroyed me too. You cried to me, said you had no way out, that you couldn't stand the thought of a life with a beggar. You begged for my help. I thought you were my sister, but you've ruined my life. Naomi shrieked. And you? Isabella screamed back, lunging at her. You're a filthy whore who slept with a 70-year-old so to get your hosting gig. You think I don't know your secrets? They descended into a full-blown, hair-pulling, screeching catfight right there on my parents' lawn. Neighbors gathered, filming the spectacle on their phones, sealing their fates forever online. They ripped each other's reputations to shreds, exposing every dirty secret and lie, providing the internet with days of scandalous content. I watched, my arms crossed, a profound sense of satisfaction settling in my soul. This was the poetic justice my past self could only have dreamed of. Once I had seen enough, I turned and went back inside, closing the door softly on the sound of their mutual destruction. With the external threats neutralized, It was time to secure my own future. I met with my lawyer and, using the irrefutable evidence of Adrian's infidelity and abandonment, formally dissolved our business partnership. I sold my entire stake in Ether Innovations to a rival tech firm for a significant sum. The money was my freedom, my parents' security, and my ticket away from this city and its ghosts. When Adrian found out, he called me from the hospital, his voice a weak, raspy roar of fury. "You sold your shares. How could you? To our competitors." "Those shares were mine to sell, Adrian," I said, my voice calm. "I can do whatever I want with them." "You're pulling the ladder up after crossing the bridge," he spat. "Their shares outweigh mine now. I don't even have decision-making power in my own company. I'm already a cripple, Maya. What more do you want? How can you be so heartless?" I listened to his impotent rage, a smile touching my lips. "This is all the retribution you deserve, Adrian. How dare you blame me? Let me tell you, heaven has eyes. Everything happening to you now, you earned it." I hung up and blocked his number for the final time. The Vances, desperate and unhinged, came looking for me at my office, but I had already resigned. "Maya doesn't work here anymore," the HR manager told them coldly, her expression one of open disgust. The story had reached every corner of the city. The Vance name was mud. With no one else to target, their wrath predictably turned fully on Isabella Rossi. They blamed her for everything, for seducing their son, for the accident, for their ruined reputation. They hounded her, sued her for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and made her life a living hell. Meanwhile, I took my parents and the money from the share sale and we left. We embarked on a long, leisurely trip, first to the serene beaches of Bali, then through the tranquil countryside of Tuscany. The change in my mother was miraculous. Away from the stress, with the sun on her face and her family around her, the worry lines smoothed from her forehead, and the color returned to her cheeks. My father fished and read and finally relaxed. We were in a small coastal town in Portugal when I received a call from an old friend. Her voice was hushed, somber. "Maya, you're not going to believe this. It's about the Vances and Isabella." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. "What happened?" "Unable to find you and furious that Isabella kept trying to run away, the Vances. They snapped. They broke into her apartment, drugged her and smuggled her back to their remote hometown. They had her locked in a shed, Maya. Like an animal. They were forcing her to have a child for Adrian to repay the debt." The story unfolded like a grisly fairy tale. The police, alerted by Isabella's worried friends after a 2-month silence, had raided the property. They found her emaciated, her limbs broken, her body a canvas of bruises, her mind shattered. She was several months pregnant. She was rushed to a psychiatric hospital, where she underwent a traumatic abortion. The surgery, complicated by her severe malnutrition, resulted in a hemorrhage. The doctors had to perform a hysterectomy. Isabella Rossi would never have children. My friend paused. "And Maya?" When they found her, she kept screaming one name. "Yours." She was screaming, "Why wasn't it you? Why didn't you save him this time?" The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I hadn't been the only one reborn. Isabella remembered her past life too. She had expected me to play my part, to be the sacrificial lamb so she could have her perfect, successful Adrian. My refusal to follow the script had shattered her world as thoroughly as it had shattered his body. The symmetry was complete. The circle was closed. And as I hung up the phone and looked out at the vast, endless Atlantic, I knew one thing for certain. It was finally over. The sea air in Portugal was a balm, but the news from home was a poison that had seeped into my newfound peace. Isabella's screams, her question, "Why wasn't it you?" echoed in the quiet moments. It confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I wasn't the sole traveler on this twisted road of second chances. The knowledge settled inside me, a cold, hard stone of resolve. I needed to see it through. I needed to look into their eyes and know, for my own closure, that they understood their damnation. I told my parents a truncated version, that there was some legal paperwork I had to finalize back home, a loose end from the company sale. They offered to come with me, but I insisted they stay, enjoy the sun. I promised I would be back within a week. The psychiatric hospital was a sterile, white-walled purgatory. The air hummed with a low-level anxiety that was almost tangible. A nurse led me to a secure room. Isabella was inside, sitting by a barred window staring at nothing. Her once beautiful face was a ruin of scars, some old and silvery, others still pink and raw. Adrian, in his final days of freedom, had taken his rage out on her features. Without expensive surgery, she was permanently disfigured. The moment her eyes focused on me, the placid emptiness vanished, replaced by a virulent, incandescent hate. She launched herself from the chair, but her movements were uncoordinated, her body broken. "You," she shrieked, her voice scraping the walls. Why didn't you shield Adrian from that accident this time? Why weren't you the one suffering instead of me? Why did it have to be me? I'll kill you. Why has my life turned out this way?" Her words confirmed everything. I didn't flinch. I simply stood there, letting her rage wash over me, a storm I had already weathered. "So you remember," I said, my voice flat and calm. "Perfect." She clapped her hands over her ears, shrieking like a madwoman, her cries echoing in the sterile room. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. He was supposed to be successful. You were supposed to be the cripple. You ruined everything." I laughed, a short, hollow sound. "I ruined everything? You called him. You lied. You set this entire tragedy in motion, not just in this life but in the last one too. You wanted him, Isabella. Well, now you have him. Or what's left of him." Her face twisted, a grotesque mask of scars and fury. "He's a monster. A broken, pathetic monster. And you," I said, leaning closer, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper, "are a barren, disfigured monster. A fine match, don't you think? Who would ever want you now? You can forget about clinging to some rich heir. Your looks are gone, and you can never give anyone an heir of your own." My words were cruel, but they were the unvarnished truth, and they hit their mark. She recoiled as if struck, her screams dissolving into ragged, hopeless sobs. "Don't worry," I said, turning to leave. "You have all the time in the world here to get used to it." "Wait," she cried out, a sliver of her old cunning returning. "He's here, you know. In the room next door. He asks about you. He still doesn't understand." A malicious smile twisted her ruined lips. "You should go see your true love. One last time." I didn't answer. I just walked out, the heavy door clicking shut behind me, locking her back into her personal hell. The nurse gave me a hesitant look. "The male patient from the incident," I said. "Adrian Vance. I'd like to see him." She nodded, leading me to another secured room. "He's been mostly catatonic. But be careful." The room was identical to Isabella's, but the man in the bed was a ghost of the man I had known. He was emaciated, his face a roadmap of scars and healing wounds. His legs were gone, the sheets lying flat where they should have been. The stench of infection and neglect clung to him. His eyes, dull and gray, were fixed on the ceiling. But when I entered, those eyes moved. They focused on me, and a spark of something, recognition, horror, desperate hope, flared in their depths. "Waya?" he whispered, his voice a dry rustle. How did I end up like this?" He tried to push himself up, but the agony from his wounds forced him back onto the pillows with a grunt. A wave of putrid air wafted from his festering injuries, and I instinctively took a step back. "Why didn't you stop me?" he breathed, his hand feebly gesturing toward the void where his legs used to be. "Why didn't you come with me?" His face contorted in an agony that was more than physical. No, this has to be a dream, a nightmare." He pressed his fingers into one of his bandaged wounds, and a sharp hiss of pain escaped his lips. The reality of it seemed to finally break through his stupor. Tears, slow and thick, welled in his eyes and traced paths through the grime on his cheeks. "Why is it like this?" His voice rose, becoming shrill and bitter. "I was supposed to be successful. Maya, why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you save me from that accident?" I crossed my arms, a cold, hard knot of satisfaction tightening in my chest. I laughed, a soft, mirthless sound. "And why exactly should I have stopped you, Adrian? Why should I have taken the accident in your place?" I took a step closer, my gaze boring into his. "Didn't you say in our last life that I threw myself in front of the car willingly? Didn't you say you never asked me to? That you wouldn't even pay for my medical bills? Didn't you say that even without me you'd be just fine?" Adrian froze. The confusion in his eyes cleared, replaced by a dawning, terrible comprehension. The memories of another lifetime, the one where I was the one broken in the bed, flooded back to him. Paya, he gasped, his eyes widening in horror. So you were reborn too. You saw the accident coming, and you just stood by. The sound of my palm connecting with his cheek was sharp and satisfying in the quiet room. His head snapped to the side. So what if I was? I said, my voice dangerously low. Being a cripple doesn't feel so good, does it? Don't worry. This life is long. Take your time to savor the pain I once endured. Take your time to slowly rot away in it. Adrian's eyes went bloodshot. A raw, animalistic roar tore from his throat. You bitch. He lunged at me, a futile, pathetic motion. Without his legs, he lost his balance and crashed to the floor with a heavy, sickening thud. The commotion brought police officers stationed outside rushing in. They hauled his writhing, screaming body back onto the bed, his torn wounds now bleeding freely, staining the white sheets crimson. He glared at me with pure, undiluted venom, spitting curses, his mind completely broken. I stood unmoved, watching his pathetic display. When his screams subsided into ragged, tearful gasps, I delivered my final blow, my voice calm and cutting. Your precious lover is lying right in the next room, I said. Didn't you once say that even if you became a cripple she would still love you? Yet this time she aborted your child and wanted to send you to prison. At those words, the last vestiges of sanity seemed to leave Adrian Vance. His face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Isabella. He snarled, the name a curse. She dared to abort my child. If not for her, I would never have ended up like this. I'll kill her. I'll kill her. I smiled, a faint, cold lifting of the corners of my lips. No, you should thank her. Once your wounds heal, you can roll yourself straight into prison in your wheelchair. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, leaving him to his howls of impotent fury. The sound was the closing chord of the symphony of my revenge. Adrian Vance had finally met his retribution. I returned to Portugal, to the sun and the sea and the comforting presence of my parents. The cold knot of hatred that had lived in my chest for so long was finally beginning to dissolve, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of peace. We extended our trip, exploring the coasts of Spain and the south of France, building new memories to overwrite the old, painful ones. Weeks turned into a month. I was sitting on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, a book in my lap, when my phone vibrated with a news alert from a hometown news source I still followed. The headline was stark and brutal. Murdericide at Havenbrook Psychiatric Facility. Vance Rossi tragedy concludes in blood. My breath caught. I clicked on the article, my heart a steady, calm drum in my chest. The details were grim. Isabella Rossi, despite her broken body, had been suffering from severe dissociative disorder and paranoid delusions. During a routine check, she had managed to snatch a plastic fruit knife a careless orderly had left behind after lunch. In a moment of twisted opportunity, she had been allowed a brief, supervised meeting with Adrian. A final attempt at some form of reconciliation mandated by a well-meaning but foolish therapist. The moment the supervisor's attention wavered, a violent incident broke out. In the struggle, both Adrian and Isabella lost their lives. The news called it the tragic end of the Vance-Rossi story. Eleanor and Robert Vance, already broken by their son's condition and their impending prison sentences for the imprisonment and torture of Isabella, were said to be inconsolable, their world utterly ended. I put the phone down. There was no sense of victory, no surge of elation. There was only a profound, echoing silence. The two people who had been the architects of my misery in one life, and the focus of my revenge in this one, were gone. Their story had reached its inevitable, ugly conclusion. Heaven itself had delivered its justice, and it was far more brutal than anything I could have ever orchestrated. A few days later, a follow-up article confirmed that due to the exceptional cruelty and circumstances of their crimes, Eleanor and Robert Vance had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Vance name was now synonymous with depravity and tragedy, a cautionary tale whispered about in our hometown. It was finally, truly over. That evening I walked with my parents along the beach. The sunset was a breathtaking explosion of orange, purple and gold, painting the sky and reflecting off the calm water. My mother linked her arm with mine, her head resting on my shoulder. My father walked slightly ahead, his hands in his pockets, a contented smile on his face as he looked out at the horizon. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" my mother asked softly, her voice full of a warmth that still had the power to heal the deepest parts of me. I looked at her, at the healthy color in her cheeks, at the peace in her eyes. I looked at my father, strong and alive. I thought of the life growing inside me, a secret I had been keeping for a few weeks, a tiny, unexpected miracle conceived in freedom and love, far away from the shadows of my past. "I am Mom," I said, and for the first time I meant it with every fiber of my being. "I'm better than okay." The storms had passed. The clouds had dispersed. The people who had once caused me pain were now nothing more than shadows, banished by the brilliant light of this new day. We settled not in our old hometown with its ghosts and painful memories, but in a quiet, sun-drenched city by the coast. We bought a small house with a garden that overlooked the sea. My father, a retired Marine, discovered a passion for growing roses, his tough hands surprisingly gentle with the delicate blooms. My mother joined a local book club and a gardening society, her laughter once again a frequent, beautiful sound in our home. The money from the sale of my shares in Ether Innovations provided a comfortable cushion, but I needed to work to build something for myself. I started my own small consulting firm, leveraging the hard-won knowledge from building a company with Adrian, but this time it was entirely on my terms. It was slow at first, but it was honest and it was mine. And then there was the greatest change of all. My daughter, Alara, was born in the spring. She had my dark hair and, I like to think, my fighting spirit. Holding her for the first time, feeling her small, warm weight in my arms, was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy that washed away the last remnants of bitterness from my soul. She was the ultimate symbol of my new life. A life not defined by past pain, but built on present love and future hope. My parents doted on her, their hearts mending with every gummy smile, every coo. We were a unit, the three of us, now four, a family forged in the fires of adversity but stronger for it. One afternoon I was pushing Alara in her stroller along the cliff path. The waves crashed against the rocks below, a powerful, eternal rhythm. The scent of salt and freedom filled the air. I stopped at my favorite lookout point, lifting Alara into my arms so she could see the vast blue expanse. I thought of the woman I had been in my first life. Trusting, blind, her entire world defined by a man who never deserved her. I thought of the vengeful spirit I had been in the early days of my second chance, consumed by a need for retribution. But I was neither of those women anymore. I had not only reclaimed justice for myself, but I had also protected the people I loved most. I had learned that my worth was not tied to a man's love or the success of a company I built with someone else. I was stronger, wiser, and I had finally learned how to let go and move forward. I didn't need a man to define my life. I didn't need love to prove I was worthy. I had chosen to live for myself, for my parents, and for the bright, beautiful tomorrow I held in my arms. Alara gurgled, reaching a tiny hand toward a seagull soaring on the wind. I smiled, kissing her soft forehead. The past was a closed book. The future was a blank page, waiting for our story to be written. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes I knew without a doubt that it would be a story of peace, of love, and of light. The long night was over. The dawn was here. The end.